All right, we will call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. From you, we do roll call.
Yep. Commissioner Diphall,
Here.
Commissioner Corbin,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Is there anything that anyone wants to discuss from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Seeing no unfinished business, we'll move on to new business. Set a hearing date of December 18th, 2023 at 5:30 for approval of resolution 2023-32, declare necessity for sidewalk improvement. And Jameson, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item feels familiar and gives a little deja vu because it is familiar. The last meeting we had set the hearing for tonight. Unfortunately, we had a mix up, and so we sent out the letters to the property owners on our sidewalk repair project, but did not get them sent out to the sidewalk improvement project. Fortunately, this delay doesn't change anything. It's still for next year's project, but we'll need to set the hearing for December 18th, and then we'll be getting those letters sent out for that new hearing date.
All right. So with that, do we have a motion to set the new hearing date of December 18th?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, discussion of preliminary operations for the First Bank and Trust Sports Complex or Sportsplex. Jameson, you want to address that again?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do a background on this project to remind the commission and the public of where we're at and where we're heading and what the intent of tonight's item is. And I know we've got a number of people involved in the project here in the room, and they'd be welcome to come up and speak to it as well. So the First Bank and Trust Sportsplex, this would be the facility that was formerly a Runnings, which was donated to the LAIC to convert into a recreation facility. The conversion has been moving along nicely. There's quite a bit of difference to the outside of the building, the inside of the building, and then also the demolished properties, the buildings that are around the property as well. The LAIC, as they have been coordinating the conversion of this facility, has assembled a committee of community partners who are interested in the activities inside to help with the conversion, to help set up the policies, procedures, and operations for that facility moving forward. Within the building, it's primarily going to be focused around archery and baseball, softball, as well as agility, golf, and some other activities as well. So before the group, I'll call them the committee, that community partners that are working on it, get any further, we felt it was worthwhile to come to the commission and to the public to update and educate where we're at, where we're heading, so that if we are heading in the right direction, we can get that feedback. But if there's anything you want to see changed, we can get that feedback as well and act accordingly. So that's the background on it. With that, Brooke and anybody else who might want to come up, do you want to kind of discuss what the plan is for the Sportsplex?
Sure. Jameson covered it really well. There's multiple different areas, and so we like to section it off into turf 1, turf 2, 3 different cages, and then an archery area. I know another item that's been discussed is ping pong, just where they best are suited, whether it's the armory or the sportsplex. So each individual space can actually be rented out. So you can have multiple maybe families or multiple activities going on at one time. It's kind of the background of it. Again, we've really thought through the technology piece of it as well, so that the goal is to have it be unstaffed, so that you check in with an access code, you have all of your camera system, so that at any given time, it's similar to the armory, you know exactly who's in there, when they're in there, so if there ever does become a problem, it's easily identified, who was responsible for that space at that any given time. Again, this isn't an access, isn't easily accessible to young kids, always a parent with at all times. So you need to have an adult to access the facility. Again, a little bit different than maybe what we're accustomed to in some spaces, but I would say the goal is always to mimic the armory. We did do our due diligence, called around to a number of different like facilities, and they too are, accessible by code. Use a facility for their hour, they come and then they leave completely on staff. So I think that was probably the largest point of the conversation is the commission comfortable operating as an unstaffed facility? And then, is there any other details, Jameson, you're looking for?
I would say the staffing is likely the biggest consideration. Both the financial commitment, if we were to staff the facility, even if you're paying somebody a modest wage of $15 an hour, you're gonna be staffing it for general daytime operations throughout the year. That adds on a significant expense. From the beginning, when Runnings was proposing to donate the property to LIC and this project was coming together as an idea, the idea was that this facility would not add on more cost to the city. That would be set up with intent to break even and also save a little bit of money to set aside for future improvements and repairs. So the cost is a big factor if the city wants to maintain that objective.
Yes, we did put together a mock budget. Again, it's not our budget to hold, but we just needed to put an idea of what should, each space cost per day, per month to break even. So just to keep the doors open, the lights on, it's about $120,000 a year. And again, that's setting some money aside for reserves just to continue to evolve the campus. So that's kind of where we come up with the numbers, and we're not looking to make money. No one's looking to make a dollar on it, but we do really want to consider, what it's going to take to keep the property kept up, as well as how you continue to improve it. So kind of backed into that number per space. So it's $20 per cage, $20 per turf per hour, and then I believe $10 per archery lane. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into how you charge each space, so that you can make enough revenue to keep those doors open, lights on. Again, it's not perfect, but I've tried to think of every snow removal, every utility bill, anything you could think of. We've really tried our best to.
I guess I would be a fan running it on staff. I think there's technology in place and campus systems and.
Very comparable to the school system.
Yeah, very much so.
Very much. School gyms after hours, I would say it's the exact same.
I think you guys have vetted this through our attorney. Is there any issues there, or what about insurance? That's what.
I did reach out to our insurance and to safety benefits. They would be on the risk management side of recommendations for municipalities. And I had a nice conversation with safety benefits here recently, and they outlined concerns that anybody would have with unstaffed facility, with 20-hour facility. And we talked through what our plan is with the cameras, with the access, with the staffing. And they, I think, felt that we had a good plan of action put in place. And did not have any significant concerns, I guess.
I don't find it to be outrageously unique either in the world of activities that we're typically, that we're used to, right? They're volunteer driven, they're coach driven, they're group, activity driven, club, whatever it might be. And so it's really not a unique concept to anything that we've been doing in our community already.
Yeah, I'd like to give these groups an opportunity to prove they can take care of this facility. And until they prove us wrong, we have to staff it. Let's give it a try.
I will note that we've said as a group multiple times that this project will, by necessity, need to continue to evolve. We're going to put together some rules and some policies, and on day 2, after they're implemented, we're probably going to have to rethink some of those and look at doing it differently. So we know it's an evolving project, but the goal at this point in time is to unstaff it and use access controls and security cameras to monitor the facility.
Other questions, comments? Anyone from the audience?
You're also gonna have a dog.
If you wouldn't mind coming forward in that for the benefit of those who are listening via computer.
Yeah, I apologize. We have a beautiful golf net that's Mike's favorite part of the entire project, putting that together and making it collapsible. So, I forgot, we do have 3 golf spots.
I didn't know we had golf nets to protect. Maybe we didn't need somebody there.
Yeah,
So I think, my understanding is the park. Park was gonna be mainly in charge of this. Mike, would you have any issues?
Well, it's coming up, I'll elaborate a little bit too. So, yeah, the Parks Department's going to be tasked with general operations for maintenance, repairs, for cleaning to make sure that the facility is operating correctly. And the community center, they're also here in the room, their software, Club Automation, is able to help us with the scheduling component. And then our IT staff are connecting that with the access to the buildings as well. So it's definitely an all hands on deck project.
That basically sums it all up.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Still your thunder.
I think that, the height, the cleaning and stuff like that will probably, during the summertime will be seasonal help that we can, rotate them in. And then in the wintertime, we'll probably have full-time guys that help that are, busy work on certain times when we're not moving snow and on that aspect of it. It's the way I'm kind of planning on running it.
I've had a lot of comments from the public as to how soon is it gonna be open? And what all is gonna be available in there, and so there's some excitement out there, no question.
That's it, and I guess it's probably worth speaking to that as well, since the public is asking that same question. As far as an opening, and we're expecting that the scheduling component is going to take more time to figure out how to get the correct and adequate access to the building for people who make reservations to use it. We are hoping after the new year that we can open it up to teams and in larger groups who want to start testing out the facility. That helps us to work out some kinks, also helps us to start bringing in some revenue to pay for the facility. And then once that scheduling and access component is implemented, we'll be able to fully open it up to anybody who wants to reserve a spot.
Are you gonna do an open house?
I can't wait to do an open house. Yes,
Well,
hopefully shortly after the first of the year could be the goal. I mean, once it's ready, as far as renovation goes, and the last piece, we're waiting on this technology. I think having an open house for the public would be really fun.
Maybe any comments or concerns on your end?
No, I think we're ready to go with it. I think the only thing that is needed to be acknowledged is it's a 24/7 access facility. So they're looking at opening it at all hours, 24/7. That's something to consider.
Yeah.
Right, that was a big discussion point as well. Even if it's unstaffed, having it open during the night hours is different than having it open during the day hours. And so on one hand, you can look at it, we still got the security cameras to determine if anything is happening that shouldn't be. And anything that happens in there during the night could happen during the day. But on the other hand, we know that nighttime is the time that more activities can occur. And if that's the case, we might need to reevaluate and move to just daytime operations. So certainly, if you have any feedback or direction on that, we appreciate it all.
anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, please, please.
So number one, I guess, Mike Kane, if you don't know me. Want to say thank you. There's been an enormous amount of volunteers that have come in and helped either fundraise, put things together, build, and do that sort of thing. Enough thanks cannot be said enough to that component of this. What I actually wanted to speak about though is that this is a project that, number one, is near and dear to a lot of people in the community. And the point of what I'm trying to say is that from a financial standpoint, there has been more work done on this project than most businesses do to vet their own cash flows in a year. And when we come back and this project is complete, and we have that idea of whether it's $300 a day to break even or $320 a day, those numbers are going to be fairly accurate. And when we're talking about a facility of this type, to have that kind of a daily annual cash flow, it's quite small for the type of facility that it is and the amount that it gives back to the community. I also want to point out that there is a significant amount of businesses in town that have donated immensely to this project and are excited to see it go and become what it could be. So with that, to answer your question, yes, we're absolutely going to have an open house there. And it may fall into having more than one so that people can actually come in and demonstrate and see how things work. We've also worked with several other people with regards to, I know that the high school has been interested in being able to come in with baseball or softball in the spring or golf. Dakota State University has expressed some interest and whatnot also. This is a pay-to-play facility, and all the people there will eventually have to figure out how to take care of the cost of renting the facility. But that same thing being said, for the places that we live here in the United States and the winters that we can have experienced even a year ago, to be able to allow our students and student athletes the ability to participate and be ready to go when that first pitch is thrown in the spring is enormous. So thank you for all your guys' time, and I appreciate what you guys have done for this. So
And thank you guys as well for the effort that's gone into this, and it's been exciting to watch it. You know, and looking back at going in there to buy, you know, some wiring or something like that and seeing it now. For those who haven't been in the building yet, it looks totally different. It really does, and it's really amazing.
It's a humbling experience to see all the volunteers. That's
Mhm.
unmatched.
Mhm. Anyone else? Questions, comments? If not, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And move on to number 3, discussion on the Egan Avenue reconstruction preliminary engineering report. And KLJ's representative is here.
Did you have the PowerPoint? I didn't bring a clicker, but I have my own slides if you want to just follow me along when I flip them.
If you'd like to just say click.
Yeah.
Snap your fingers on it.
So I can just start by kind of letting you know how this works. So we have produced a report, have a few hard copies here I can leave with you. I've also provided the PDFs to Jameson and Ryan. The presentation is basically just a summary of the report or the highlights of the report. And we'll kind of go through the process of how we got to where we go or where we are as we go through the process. So like I said, the background information, we were brought on in August to start looking at the reconstruction of North Egan Avenue. The objectives we were given at the time were reduce the amount of asphalt along the corridor, provide more green space, create a gateway from downtown to DSU, maintain on-street parking as much as possible, and if possible, begin construction in 2024. So we kind of went into that process, and we did our topographic survey, we did geotechnical investigation, and we started working on some concept drawings to kind of accomplish those objectives. And then we also did some public engagement, which included a few individual meetings with property owners along the corridor and an open house at the Methodist Church on November 2nd. So as I kind of explained up through this point, we haven't done any design. We've basically just been working on a concept level. You guys gave us some objectives. We're trying to find a solution that will fit those that we will then explore further. So on some of the components, we have water and sewer systems. The plan is to replace all of the water and sewer systems along the entire corridor. The water mains are 80 years old. They're cast iron mains. You already have signs of valves and things that don't work. As long as you're reconstructing the street, it just makes sense to replace those and put in modern mains. And the sewer is clay tile. I think we all know the issues with that. Almost everyone in the country is replacing those with new PVC mains as well. The next item was storm drain. There's actually quite a bit of storm drain up there, but it's either undersized or isn't working. Over the years, the gutter capacity has been reduced based on the number of overlays and things like that. And there's places where the water doesn't actually get to the storm drain. It puddles someplace else and then further breaks down your pavement. And then there's places like in the picture where that's just completely plugged full of silt and dirt, so it can't be functional. That would all be replaced and reconfigured so that we would have good drainage, at least in the nuisance storms, we'll call them. Obviously, there's a flooding issue down there that can't really be addressed by a street project, but I think we all understand that. The next item would be the streetlights. So this is where some of the further explanation or exploration needs to come in. You have what I'll call conventional mast arm type streetlights up there in the median. That replacing those with light lights would most likely be the cheapest option. But as this is a historic district, there are other options to look at where you might add some more aesthetic value for a little bit more money, but then you also have to compare that to the additional maintenance costs where you have to store more parts because it's different lights than you have everywhere else through the city. So that's one of the decisions if we decide to move forward with design that we'll probably have discussions on and probably look for some guidance from you all at some point. The next item would be pedestrian facilities. And at the open house, we presented some alternatives for bump outs. The reasoning behind these basically is as currently devised, you basically have two residential streets right next to each other. So as foot traffic has to go across Egan, that's an awful long way for them to cross. And we know that pedestrians typically avoid those wide crossings just because of the feeling of being, out in the middle of traffic and things like that. So oftentimes when we do projects like this, we look at these bump outs, which narrow the throat at the crossing to as narrow as possible so that it's easier for a pedestrian to cross the street without having to be in the traffic lanes for too long. We provided three options, which the first one is bump outs in every direction. So basically every leg of the intersection would be neck down to just the driving lanes. That's going to give you the most pedestrian, comfort, we'll call it, but also be the most expensive and the most difficult to construct. The next option would be just necking down the Egan crossing so that because your side streets aren't necessarily as wide because they don't have the median, obviously. Again, that's more pedestrian comfort for a little less cost. And then the third option is basically the existing configuration where the Egan Avenue is exceptionally wide and the side streets are what they are. Obviously, that would be the cheapest to construct, but doesn't really provide you the pedestrian comfort like is in current standards. The next item would be the street improvements. So as we laid this out, we tried to keep the curbs where they are and then work with conventional parking lane widths. So your parallel or your angled parking is somewhere in the range of 17 feet wide. And your parallel parking is somewhere in the range of 8 feet wide. And then provide a 16-foot driving lane in each direction. And you'll see on the exhibit that's up on the cabinet over there, the top left picture is basically that exact configuration that's on Phillips Avenue in Sioux Falls. What that does is it's a slightly wider driving lane than normal, but if you say had a vehicle that was in that section of block and a fire truck or an ambulance was coming through, that vehicle could pull to the curb and the fire truck and ambulance could get around it. That's the idea behind that. With that, that would be in the blocks that have angle parking, essentially the lane width and median width would not change at all. In the blocks that have parallel parking, the pavement would get narrower on each side to about 24 feet. And then the median would be about 22 feet wide. Some of the current concerns that came up during our stakeholder engagement were turning movements at certain intersections. One was, we'll start at the right and work left, was the left turn lane for a bus. I believe at the 3rd Street intersection was the concern.
3rd Street.
So we've laid that out. This is a program that we use to model turning movements of different vehicles. We do a lot of sizing for loading docks and things like that for truck turning movements with these. But at the far right, that shows basically a standard school bus turning left. And you can see that even with the bulb outs, it's still within the travel lanes. There's not really any more restriction of movement than you have today, because where the bulb outs are is where your parking lane is anyway. So there would be cars there anyway. The middle one is a delivery truck or a UPS truck making a U-turn with the 22-foot medians. And you can see there that it basically stays within the driving lanes. It's actually probably a little bit easier to make a U-turn with the wider median than with the narrower one. And then the far left is a boat trailer backing into a standard driveway. So one of the concerns was that movement into one of the blocks that doesn't have alleys. And part of the problem with that turning movement is that the existing driveways are really narrow at the street side. And as part of the project, I think we would recommend widening those throats, so it would be easier to make that movement into there. But that does bring us into, the options for those street improvements. I said we've laid it out with the 16-foot lanes, but there are other options where we could provide a shoulder and make the median narrower, or there's even been a comment about adding bike lanes. So that, that's things that we'd look for you guys to kind of tell us, because it's not our decision to make, it's the community of Madison's to make.
Well, just one thing on that, on the first one that you had there, where you have the bus turning, the
Mhm.
bus actually comes from the other direction.
Okay,
And so it would go over the bump out, and that, because it would be turning from a right lane into a right lane,
okay, we can certainly show that as well.
Yep. And 3rd Street, there isn't an option to go straight across.
Yep.
Where there is at 5th and 6th and that, So, 3rd Street, and then again at 8th Street. We have a video in that, that I've seen, and that of a 53-foot semi. Because 8th Street is closed on the east end. The semi is typically delivering to DSU regularly. Have a tendency to come in off from 9th Street, come south, go west so they can back in for deliveries, doing deliveries. Then when they come out onto Egan, currently, and that, it makes that the whole width there, and for the 53 footer to stay off the current. curb. So Third Street and Eighth Street are two that I've seen and have, you know, concerns on just because of the amount of larger vehicles in that use it.
Yeah, and as part of design, that would be, you know, we'd continue to use this program and figure those out as we get into those critical intersections. I think the big concern for those is not necessarily the width at the throat of the intersection, it's how far that median extends into the intersection.
Understood?
And if you look at those, we have it pulled back behind the crosswalk specifically to allow those turning movements a little bit easier.
And then the other concerns in that I've heard too is maintenance and snow removal,
Mhm,
which, you know, is huge
mhm.
and huge on our budget, and bump outs and that are expensive
Mhm.
to put in. And they look nice for the first year or two, and after that, they get hit, they get broken, and we get a lot of complaints on that on, you gotta get that snow out of that corner.
Mhm.
So, personally, and from a few people that have talked to me, they prefer, you know, the street being straight without bump outs. And I know we have a number of people here that, you know, I would appreciate, you know, their comments as well.
Mhm. On landscaping, so, the big concerns here were the tree impacts. I did provide you some full-size sheets. We had our, landscape architect do a tree inventory of the corridor. And a lot of the trees within the, median are in poor shape because they've been hit by vehicles and snow plows and things like that. Plus the maintenance around them is difficult with that narrow median to be able to mow around them and not hit the base of the tree and damage them. But there's also trees within like the existing boulevard, so between the curb and the walk. That are likely to be impacted by construction. It's very hard to rebuild the street to the curb, or even the curb and the walk and save those trees, because as soon as you impact their root system, you know, it damages them, you know, it's almost always kills them. So typically on projects like this, we take those trees down in the beginning of the project. But any of those impacts, we plan to meet with those individual property owners and talk with them so that they understand, you know, what the process is and try to, you know, work with you guys to try to accommodate them as much as possible. The other concern on landscaping were private sprinkler systems. So I believe the current city policy for private sprinkler systems within the right of way is that the project will cut back the sprinkler systems, but then the property owners are responsible for replacing them or repairing them beyond that point. So that's, I know that that was one of the concerns of a few of the property owners, so that's something that we'll likely look for guidance from you guys on. And then the final item for landscaping was retaining walls. So there are some existing retaining walls out there. They are, one of them is in pretty good shape, the other one is in not so good a shape. One of the big problems is that the water services run directly through the walls. So in order to replace those services, it's going to be very difficult to save those walls. The other item is that it severely impacts the ADA accessibility of those sidewalks. I'm sure as you've seen, the sidewalks at intersections have to be extremely flat to meet ADA compliance. Well, when they're, I think one of the intersections has 3 steps where the ADA ramp would be. So that sidewalk is really high compared to the street. In that case, we're likely going to have to be moving the wall from between the walk and the curb to behind the walk. And we understand that this is a historic neighborhood, so there's going to be some concerns with that. You know, it's a little different than when they're doing 57th Street in Sioux Falls, where they can just put up concrete walls and, you know, it's the back of everyone's yard, no one really cares. So we've kind of looked at different alternatives for that as well. We have a board form type wall, which would probably be the most cost effective, but it's not necessarily the most aesthetically pleasing, especially when you're looking at historic nature. There's a light sandblast finish, which is probably nearly the same as the cost effectiveness. It does soften the texture of the concrete, but it's still a concrete wall. And then the third option is a masonry finish where basically we could take field stone and mimic the look of those existing walls out there with a masonry finish. Obviously, that's gonna be the most expensive, but it's also, you know, the most aesthetically in line with what is already out there. And I believe those walls match some of the walls that are within your Memorial Park as well.
So could we save the existing wall if we bored the service line in underneath it and put cutbacks for the sidewalks at the end of the block?
One of them, the one that's in poor shape likely would not be able to be saved. Because
Which one?
it should be it's grouted stone essentially, and
Oh,
it's,
the wall.
yeah, and it's, the grout is deteriorating. So as you do the street work, it's likely not to survive.
It makes me sad.
If you walk on that block, as you mentioned, there's two retaining walls, and one you could see has clearly had maintenance and been taken care of over the years. And the other one just hasn't had the same level of maintenance, and I think it's pretty clear any work in the street would quickly erode that wall, and it would shake it right apart.
Is this a decision we have to make?
Not right now, but at some point, yes.
Well, I mean, like the finish on the, okay.
There are other, you could do a combination of these, so. Confluence, as our landscape architect pointed out, we could do, you know, maybe like a 5-foot section on either side of the stairs leading up to the front doors in the masonry. And then go to one of the cheaper options for further away from the front stairs. So you get a feel of the historic nature, but not all of the cost. Because even with the masonry finish, you're going to get a concrete wall behind it. You know, it's just a matter of what the face of that wall looks like. So with that, putting together this concept, we came up with a construction estimate of roughly 7.8 million. And there's a detailed estimate in the report. I just kind of went through these different sections here. That does include a 20% contingency, but that gives you an idea of the funding liability that we would be looking at for the entire project. With the funding or the proposed costs, we also looked at funding opportunities. There are funding for utilities and surface improvements. The main utility fundings is state revolving funds, SRF, which is through DANR. And then there is also USDA rural development funds. And then there's a potential funding for lead service lines. I'll start at the top there. So state revolving funds, it requires us to get on the state water plan. We were able to do that within a pretty short time frame. Unfortunately, though, the application for the state revolving funds that would apply would be January 1st. And with the getting started on this kind of late in the fall and with the amount of time it took to get to this process where we are, we're not gonna be able to make that funding resource. If we could, that would allow us to get funds basically awarded in April, I believe, and would potentially be able to be under construction in 2024. Without being able to make it in January 1st, then the next application is April 1st, and that wouldn't be awarded until midsummer to fall of 2024, which then doesn't allow us to basically be in construction in 2024. We can still apply for the funds, go after them because we did make the state water plan. But if we want to go after funds for that source, we basically won't be able to construct in 2024. We'll have to wait till 2025. It's a very similar situation for USDA funds. They require us to go through a preliminary engineering report to apply for their funds, which would add some more to our schedule. And that would be applied for likely in the March timeframe. And then obviously with their award, it wouldn't be able to be constructed in 2024. And then the final one was the lead service lines. they're currently doing an inventory of lead service lines in the state. Depending on, and I don't believe that's due until October, I believe, of 2024. Depending on the amount, each jurisdiction may have to figure out how they're gonna fund those lead service lines replacements, and there may be pots of money there to fund it. But we don't know because they're too early in that process. As they get through the inventory, they may come out with more programs that then we could apply in 2025 funds. And then the surface funding includes transportation alternatives, which is for non-motorized forms of transportation. Again, same story there. They wouldn't fund a construction project until 2025. And there is one additional new program called Safe Streets for All that we did explore. Because it's new, there's not really a whole lot of history on how it works and how the funds would be applied. The big one with that is it's meant for safety improvements. And we did check the accident records and checked with the police department. And we don't think that this corridor would really qualify for a significant safety improvement. So kind of just wrote that one off, but we did provide it to you so that you have the information and know that we looked at it. So if 5 years down the road after we did this project, someone comes back and says, well, why didn't we look at this? We did. The next item for consideration is the construction schedule and phasing. So initially we were looking at potentially building this in 2 phases. That might be all of the southbound lanes and then all of the northbound lanes. So that we can continue two-way traffic on one side of the median while we construct the other side of the median. We could also do the north half first or the south half first and then vice versa. Again, to try and limit the amount of closed street as possible and to maintain access as much as possible, or a combination of the two. You know, it may be that we want to limit the impact to the businesses or the churches along that first 2 blocks near Second Street as much as possible. And then, or we want to coincide with DSU in some way to make sure that, you know, we're doing their frontage improvements during when school is not in session. So there's things that we have to work through on that, and also kind of depends on how the water and sewer fits in with the design. But again, that's something we'll explore more. So this is where we get into the critical decisions. So in this document, I have 2 pages of decisions that we're going to have to flush out. But in order to move forward with design and to start identifying some of those, these decisions are really the most critical. We kind of need them answered before we can take the next step. The first one is the bump out question. If you want us to continue to explore bump outs or just completely write them off, you know, altogether, you know, that's up to you guys to tell us, but it does have a scope change for us. You know, if we're not looking at bump outs, it makes things a little bit easier. If we have to continue to look at those alternatives, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. Similar with the driving lanes, you know, if we are good with basically maximizing the median and maintaining a 16-foot driving lane, you know, that's one way of looking at things. If you want to look at additional alternatives, you know, we can certainly scope that into the next item. Or if you have a preference either way now, whether you want to look at 20-foot driving lanes or shoulders or bike lanes, you know, we look for that direction. And then similarly on the funding items, if you want us to continue to pursue state revolving funds in April, if you want to have us look at rural development funding and the potential lead service funding down the road. And then also if you want us to look at transportation alternative funding, obviously that would mean that the construction of the project could not happen until 2025. The only way that we could continue with 2024 construction was if the city was willing to basically pay for the whole project themselves. Because none of the funding agencies are going to be able to give you funds that would be able to apply to 2024 construction. That's it. I can take any questions or.
One comment, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
One comment I'd add is in the full report, they did have as an appendix, a lot of the public feedback that they received, written feedback, that helped otherwise. So I can send that report out to you, the email, and you can review that. It was very interesting to see the feedback that we got. We got a lot of really excellent feedback, good public engagement. The open house was well attended. Doesn't always make the decisions easy, and some of these critical decisions that Matt's outlined here. For example, we had on feedback at that open house, people ranging from I love the designs just as is to exactly that. And we had people saying, I hate the designs, I just want the asphalt replaced, keep everything else the same. So that's the range of what you have to consider here, and ultimately the feedback from you will help us with that decision.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
One of the things that was brought to my attention, and I had forgotten about it, is, you know, when I was mayor before and that project was started with ISG and that looking at, you know, redesigning Egan Avenue. And since then, since that public meeting and that, I did have, you know, discussions with some of the people, primarily with Dakota State. Dakota State is growing and will probably continue to grow. And so one of the things in that, you know, that was talked about and really proposed before, and having looked back at it and seeing it, I see this in Phoenix when I go down to my daughters down there and that's where the additional parking, you know, is designed into between 6th Street and 8th Street. And then in Phoenix, what they do is they have bumps. So as people come up and that, you know, to enter the area where the parking is, and that they can go over, you know, a speed bump. But it diverts the traffic over and it does utilize the street better, you know, in terms of having additional parking for the growth of Dakota State University. And I see this, you know, as something that I, you know, would like both, you know, input from. One of the comments and that I did have someone say was, well, it makes a longer distance and that, you know, like when you're crossing and going to make a left-hand turn. So then I took a look at it from that standpoint. It really isn't any different than making a left-hand turn on all of our streets that go onto Highway 34 now. Because on Highway 34 now, they changed it from a 4-lane to a 5-lane. Well, being 5 lanes, you have to go 3 lanes in that to get into your first lane to go, you know, on a left-hand turn. On 34, we're in a 35 mile speed area, the way people drive. Here, we're in a 20-mile zone. The incidents that we've had and accidents that we've had have been on 34. You know, people crossing the street on 34. I don't know of one, and I did not check with the chief and that, you know, to look back and see, but I don't recall and not there being a pedestrian vehicle accident on Egan Avenue. You know, so that's something in that, you know, I would like to throw out there, you know, and have a little revisit on it, because whatever we do in that now, it's gonna be 60 years or probably more before Madison gets a chance to do it again. And I don't see DSU getting smaller, but in this particular area and that parking is needed. Parking is definitely needed. And so this isn't new to us, but it would be new to us. Because there's other towns in that I've seen it in, and I really think it functions well. So that, you know, may be something new for you and that to look at, so. But the other thing I would like to do right now is I see a lot of people out here and that have a concern with Reagan Avenue. And I'd like to ask them, is there anyone that would like to, you know, step up and make comments at this point? And the things I'm thinking, my preference, and from listening to others, and this is personal, and from a few others, no bump outs. You know, just from the standpoint of being able to maintain the street, you know, better down the road and also give us a little bit better option, you know, whether it's 16 foot wide with a 22-foot median or a 12-foot and a 4-lane bike lane. And that, I think that is the 12-foot with a 4-foot bike lane. I'd like to see personally. And that because we have more and more people in that are on bicycles and that all the time.
So would you put the bike
And-
lane right by the traffic lane?
That's what
Well,
they do in the other.
So
It's not safe.
we've kind of chewed on that a little bit. Because of it's a 20-mile-an-hour zone, it might just make sense to do the 16-foot lane and then just stripe it as a shared bike lane. And that helps with going after TA funding because TA is specific to non-motorized transportation, then they could pay for a portion of your travel lane.
I'm gonna put Roy in the solid car guy category. He definitely wants this to be as automotive friendly as humanly possible, so. It'll be an interesting conversation, Roy.
Sounds good. From the audience, I see a lot of people here. Is there anyone that would like to comment? Yeah, John, would you mind coming up for the benefit of the public and that with what do we call it, the owl?
Don't mind. John Hunter, resident of Madison, I own property in North Egan. I agree that Dakota State is likely to stay this size or grow, which I think increases the need for pedestrian safety as there would be more traffic on Egan Avenue. I favor bump outs on Egan Avenue only, not on the side streets. I think the side streets will be perfectly adequate for pedestrian crossing, but I do believe that the pedestrian safety, especially the first 2 blocks for the funeral homes and the churches where there tends to be a lot of pedestrian traffic. If you ever see a well-attended funeral or visitation or church service, people are parking on the side streets and so forth, and a lot of walking there. So I favor the bump outs, especially only on Egan Avenue. But especially if you had to have some sort of compromise, at least on the south end of the proposed reconstruction.
Just to clarify, and that south end and that because of the angle parking, I don't think it showed bump outs right there, did it?
Yep.
Just there still is, yes.
Okay,
And one of it is, they pointed out, one of the things had bump outs on 3rd Street on each side there, but I don't think that's appropriate. So I do think I'm a huge fan of this project. I remember when the boulevards were wider. And I recognize the problems we're having maintaining that surface. So I think this will solve a lot of problems, but I do think pedestrian safety is an important element here. And our climate, I understand the snow removal in our climate and so forth. We are not the only city in the northern climate who is considering these. There are a lot of successful ones. Yes, does it take a little skill by the snow operator? Sure. But I think we have skilled operators who can handle that just fine, as they do in other northern cities.
anyone else? Yes,
I'm Pat Keating. I live right across from the Monk Library. And I provided the mayor and Ryan, our engineer, with a tractor trailer that was turning off 8th Street on the Egan Avenue, and it was a 53-foot trailer, that didn't include the tractor. He utilized, when he turned on to Egan, he was as far to the curb on 8th Street as he could be. And still almost drug his rear tandem axles over the median. He didn't do it, but it was extremely close.
Yeah.
He was within inches. I personally am not in favor of bump outs. I would. Personally, I don't know why we need 22 feet of median either. It would look nice, but I think it's excessive. I think maybe 16 foot would be adequate. The city's gonna have a hard time. I mean, they mow it occasionally and when it needs it, but this is gonna require a much more labor on their part to keep that mowed and looking nice, and the girls take good care of the flower pots that are on there, and just my 2 cents.
Yeah, currently in that, mowing it and that it has to be done by hand because it's not wide enough now to get a riding mower on. So it would be more cost effective for the city if the median were wider. Because then they could use.
Wider.
Yeah, the median be wider, because then they could use a riding mower.
Yeah.
Which would, be quicker and that, and, you know, easier, for the employees and also get it done quicker.
And I guess have you done on the different scenarios? You've done the cost analysis, it's almost $8 million. But have you done the cost analysis of with bump outs, no bump outs? I think that would be. Information.
No,
Information that the bump outs have to be almost the most expensive portion.
yeah, it would be marginally more expensive.
Of that estimate.
But of that, nearly $8 million, it would be within that contingency that we had in there, so it's not going to, effectively change the overall project.
So, why are you anti-bump out?
For one reason, because of the turning radius, and that leaves very,
For the semis?
yeah, that leaves a very narrow tunnel that they have to. At least on my corner.
What made it discourage semis from driving on you guys?
But they have to deliver to DSU and that's the
Well,
only way they can do it.
they could go back on the 9th Street.
There's no way to turn around once they come down in there.
Well,
That's the thing.
I don't know how they can't turn around. I guess you're gonna call me next time there's one over there. I want to see this. Nick, and what's your other issue?
Cost.
Yeah.
I guess that's not my issue, but. It is. And I think a narrower median would. Add to making the bike lane. More doable as well. Anyway, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make one comment based on what he said, which brought up a good idea for me. So the 22-foot median, I think that's kind of the widest I could be and still have ample room for a driving lane. But to your point, it could be a 20-foot or a 18-foot or 16-foot. Ultimately, that there's a lot of wiggle room in there. It could be really up to 22 foot and we still have sufficient driving room. Right now with, what is it, 6 foot, I'm guessing, I don't know. What, the current median,
Yeah,
it's so narrow that it causes issues for plows and street sweepers when those branches are hanging over the road. So we do want to see some kind of wider median, but whether it's 15 foot or 22 foot, we don't, there's certainly wiggle room there.
I believe that the wider we make streets or lanes, the faster people drive. I was walking my dogs the other night and somebody had to be going 50 miles an hour down Egan. I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, it's a freeway and,
I've been passed on it because people think it's a 4-lane.
right. So it seems a little excessive the way it's set up now. I think we can make it much more pedestrian friendly and more appealing to the eye and still have it meet its traffic needs.
Well, and
Just
if you drive Egan north or south, either way, you're gonna see a break that is basically a straight line down the street. That basically is where the old curbs used to be. They were taken out. And John was the one that brought up and that the idea for taking the curbs out and narrowing the median back then was to provide additional parking for Dakota State University and students. So with inside parking and outside parking, and cars driving between, and it never caught on. And so if you drive and keep that broken line on your left-hand side, you'll see, you know, basically how it used to be back in these days. And this picture here is like from the 1930s. Because of the vehicles in that are pictured in the picture. So that's when he was little kid playing football in the median. Okay, as well as Hexaman and a few others that I visited with. So, and it does have a picture of the original, you know, historic streetlights and that from back during that time period. And then if you go back to 1909, this is Egan Avenue. And there was no blacktop at all. The street's the same width and that, but it was dirt back then. So that's why I say, you know, it's really important that we look far down the road to the future. Because once we do this and that, it's gonna be 60 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years before anything else has been done. And I've been in Madison 45 years. And Egan has always looked like it does now in those 45 years. So when those curbs were taken out and it narrowed, I don't have a date. So
Have we collaborated with DSU then at all, or?
I did, and they would love to have the additional parking. And this project here, and Eric left. This project here that was put together with over a year of public input and meetings and that, and so we've had that on the shelf and it was only completed and put together in 2020. So I mean, it's recent,
Yeah.
you know,
And
but
I'll
again,
note-
it's a different engineering.
Yeah, and I'll know that plan, that master plan from downtown, was a great master plan, great resource. Can I ask people in the room to quiet down again, please? Thank you. It's a great resource, great master plan for the engineering company to put together. We did provide that to KLJ. We did have discussions on it early on. And we're open to public feedback to see if that's something we need to incorporate more into the designs here. With the parking along the DSU side, our concern was the moving of the traffic at 2 points in order to get it from one lane of the road to the other and then back again. I'm not an engineer, but I know that was something that was brought up and we were intrigued by the idea and discussed it, but ultimately didn't hear a lot of public feedback from it. Matt, Ryan, would you anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if we wanted to provide angle parking on the northbound lanes on the left side, we would just eat into the median that we have proposed now. But that master plan did have both lanes of traffic moving to the west side of the median. So that they could convert that northbound lane basically into a parking lot for DSU. The other component that I'll, throw out there is that that's equally gonna be difficult for snow removal. And the city is going to be on the hook for that parking because the state does not do maintenance for cities.
Right, so it's certainly an idea we can still consider. I just wanted to be known that it wasn't something that was forgotten. We did incorporate that into our discussions.
I remember talking about it.
Yeah, because this is something and that's used in other cities and, when I go down to Phoenix and that, I drive like that and see it. And it just makes a lot of sense. And when we have a shortage of areas now for people to park around Dakota State University, and I don't see it getting lesser for the need of parking, I think we need to take a real strong look at providing them and maximizing as much as we can. Anyone else? All right. With that, this here was an update. We don't have any motion that needs to happen.
Right, but Matt, were you looking for any direction specifically in those items?
I was hoping for the bump outs and whether we wanted to try and maximize the medians. And then also on funding, if we were going to continue to go after state revolving funds and look at USDA and then also TA funds. All would push the project to 2025.
You know, I'm fine with going to 2025 and that if the city can get assistance, you know, from some other funding sources. And the other thing that we need to look at is if we, you know, try and hurry this thing up and that, and then try to go out to bids in 2024. There's already projects out there, you know, that, the contractors are bidding on it. And, you know, we may be better off in that if we get our ducks in a row, earlier, you know, in 2024 and get contractors on board, maybe we can get some contractors that can start the project and stay with it, not through the summer instead of what we've had issues with the last couple of years. Other thoughts?
Works for me. I think I'd like to go after the SRF money, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, if we get assistance, that'd be great.
And I think this would be a good stretch of road to try bump outs on, so I'm gonna throw bump out.
I don't wanna make any hasty decisions here on this either, because it is a very important, you know, beautiful area of our community, so.
So I'm hearing pretty clear direction on the funding and the timing of the construction. The driving lane maybe be the next piece to take, so whether we have less pavement or the same amount of pavement would be a simple way of putting it. We have direction on that.
I have seen a number of towns in that use what Matt said there, where you have the wider pavement and then striped for a bicycle lane. And, you know, I think that keeps the drivers in that, you know, in their lane rather than all over. And then gives a better pathway for those who want to ride bikes now. Because right now they're riding right in the street, because we don't have any, you know, anything that's, you know, marked separately. So I guess my thought is there, you know, is go with the 16-foot and then have it painted, you know, as the bike lane.
Is there any way to incorporate the bike lane into the median? So I don't have as much faith in drivers as Ryan does. I don't think
Maybe,
people pay attention
we
to
can
the
certainly
drivers.
take a look at that. I can't remember what they call it, but we did do, I think it was Maple in Sioux Falls, where essentially the bike lane goes up onto the curb and separates it. But again, that's more paved or more hardscape, less green space. And I think it might limit the trees because they can't be extending into the bike lane. But we can certainly take a look at that. The problem is that we can't make the driving lane narrow. It has to be it has to be 16 feet or wider.
The driving lane has to be 16 feet or wider?
Well, yeah, you have to have 16 feet of surface. It doesn't necessarily, it could be a 12-foot lane and a 4-foot bike
Gotcha.
lane,
Thank you.
but yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
And what other spots do you see that you kind of like a little guidance on?
I think that's it. If we're good moving to 2025, I think we can explore a lot more of these things a little bit better than
Yeah,
we would if we were in that time crunch.
I guess from my personal standpoint and that, I would prefer that. Because then we have a little more time and that to kind of, you know, really take a look and finalize what really is gonna be the next 60 years of driving up Egan Avenue.
Thank you, Matt.
I do.
Thank you. And thank everyone else and that too for your input. So. All right, number 6, direct staff to prepare a request for proposal process. Oh, sure, I did that.
You got check
Check
happy
mark.
there, yeah.
I got checked out and jumped right past it. Okay. Number 4, approve an update to the Teamsters 2023-2025 collecting bargaining agreement, and Jameson, I'll ask you to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak to both bargaining agreements at the same time because they are largely the same for changes. So we have 2 collective bargaining units in town. One would be Teamsters and the other would be the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers, or IBEW. With both unions, we have 3-year contracts and we are just finishing the first year of that contract. So most of the terms for working conditions and negotiation within the contract were not open for negotiation this year. other than primarily wages and insurance. So in both cases, the contracts have been updated to accommodate for a 4% cost of living adjustment, in addition to the eligibility for 1.5% performance-based increase. That is in line with our budget that was approved, as well as the employee resolution that was approved at the last meeting. The other change is specifically for the Teamsters. So for their reopener, that also came with one item of negotiation for each side. And so the two changes there are that the internal posting period for transfers is decreased from 5 to 3 days, a relatively minor change. And then also this would be the new benefit that we discussed at the last meeting, where employees are eligible for a match to the South Dakota retirement system. And that match in the contract is $2 that every employee contributes. The employer will match $1 up to $600 a year. And so that was also a benefit that was discussed at the last meeting in that personnel resolution. So those are the changes for both collective bargaining agreements, and staff recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 5, approve update to the IBEW 2023-2025 CBA.
Nothing else to add.
Motion to approve update to IBEW 2023-2025 collective bargaining agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, now number 6. Direct staff to prepare a request for proposal process for the sale of the City Hall Police Station at 116 West Center Street, which is where we currently are. So people have time to look forward to what the future of this building can be. And Jameson, I'll ask you to address that.
With the new city administration building having construction underway out on Highland Avenue, we've got some time now to decide what we would like to do with the existing property here at 116 Center. I am still researching how other cities can handle this. Of course, within state statute, we do have requirements to follow for surplus property and bid limits, et cetera. But I do believe that other cities have found ways that they can solicit proposals from people in the area to renovate or to do projects, and we could look through those different proposals. I have on occasion heard from ideas from people in the community or outside the community that would have interest in this property. So this, if done right, would allow you guys the opportunity to hear out what those proposals are and decide how you'd like to proceed. At this point, I would just like to have some direction to allow staff to continue researching and to put together a proposal that's deemed appropriate.
I can do that.
Sounds good to me.
And I'll note that, you know, we're planning on moving into the new building at the end of 24, October, November, December timeframe. So this building, the very earliest I would see it being available would be at the beginning of 25. So it does give us plenty of time.
Now, do you want that as a motion or just direction?
Doesn't hurt. You over there want to tackle a motion?
Make a motion to direct staff to prepare RFP process for the sale of City Hall Police Station at 116 West Center Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. See, do we have any public comment? Hey. Jim. Yeah. You have on here and that, your public comment? Yeah, I do. Yeah. Where is the supervision of the West 9th Street?
Yeah, where is the supervision on the West 9th Street job from Banner, Ryan and Dan?
Okay. At this point in that,
Brian, would you like
You
to?
wanna know why I said that?
I do know why you said that, because you told me
Because I
earlier
seen
that.
it this morning.
Yep, you did. You talked to me this morning and that about
I
who's
went
gonna
up to
pick
the
up the rock.
engineer's office, there's nobody in there. I go back home, I asked that guy who was picking rocks, they're just cleaning out the medias, you know, they're just dropping fill dirt in, okay?
Okay,
Anyway. About 1:30, I got over Ryan on the phone. And. Ryan said, well, they can't. Cover them rocks up. I said, well. Banner eyeballing the skits right now in front of my house and immediate to the south. He comes down about 7 rocks. About size of a volleyball. Dumps them in the median. A little bit later, he comes and dumps dirt in there. In the meantime, Ryan sends up Dan. Dan goes over and talks to this guy. He says, you gotta get them rocks out of there, or we can push them down. I told Dan, I don't know how you can push them down, something that's been there for 50 years. You know, so finally the guy roots around and he digs out several rocks. Okay? Puts them back in the street. Anyway. In the meantime, I had to leave and I come back. I had a pile that Jim Shaver and I piled up that Winners didn't want to pick up the concrete. They picked up their stakes, their steel posts and all this out of the median, okay? But they said, we're not picking up that guy's concrete. I said, where's it gonna go? Well, the next guy will do it. Well, where'd they all go? They disappeared. So today, I go up past Mike Johnson's house up there looking for Banner, because I thought Banner was supposed to be overseeing that job. Nobody around. And they were dumping this fill dirt right on top of these rocks up past Mike's house. Which I don't know how that, why this is getting by. It's very, Banner's supposed to be eyeballing this, aren't they, Ryan?
Banner does have technicians and engineers that come to the project. However, today, I don't want to share this gentleman's personal, but one of the Banner engineers suffered an injury. He wasn't able to make it to the site. He hurt his leg. Didn't happen on our site, but he's the RPR for that project.
You know, they
So
were there
he was
last
not able to
Wednesday,
be on
Thursday,
site.
Friday, it was like a zoo. The whole, everybody contractor was there. In front of my house, there's 2 storm sewers. On the south storm sewer, they got a tuba for support in there when they poured the apron, okay? On the north side, they got 2 tuba 8s. Forms on both sides in there, and Dan looked at that today. Winter said they were gonna take it out last week, cause they talked Winter. I get along with them guys pretty good. It didn't get out. They said the concrete guy was gonna do it on Thursday. They disappeared Friday, right? I think they left town.
They're still in town.
But they're still in there. You can't let that stuff go on all winter. Somebody's gotta be eyeballing this with more through here. So that's my speech. And there's some other bad points which Mike's gonna bring up.
Mike, did you wanna add
Yeah.
to it? And then we.
Yeah, I spent Sunday, I spent about an hour and a half digging rocks out, concrete, what have you. Well, I brought a sample of what they're backfilling with. That's street sweeping with gravel and asphalt and sand.
Yeah, it looks pretty rough.
So what they're doing is they're putting that in and then they're putting a skip of black dirt on top. Okay, well, my landscaping, I'm pretty proud of it and I spent a lot of money on it. And when I did my lawn, I made sure we had a minimum of 8 inches of black dirt across the whole thing. Well, you'll never get anything to grow on this. The sod will dry out, what have you. My sidewalk is shifted, you know, and I've had Weston come up and look. He says, oh, that isn't so bad. Well, it isn't the way it was prior to the project. Okay, and I got busted corners off and he says, well, I don't think they're gonna make you replace that with the sidewalk committee. I said, it was cracked. It had a hairline crack in it. Now it's tipped down. We got a crack like this. You know, I guess I'm glad for the improvement on the street, but this is getting a little ridiculous, you know, you can call it nitpick, I don't know. I've gotta put my sprinkler systems back in. Another thing, they spread ready mix on my decorative rock and boulders. You know, this is ridiculous. And then they dug a sprinkler head out that's on my side of the sidewalk. They cut my edging and threw that.
The other thing that I'm concerned about is that on Union, where it comes, drains down on the east side, and the new curb is 10 feet further west.
Right.
So the water's gonna follow the old curb down and then get trapped behind the new curbing and the sidewalk. You know, and you're gonna have a foot or a foot and a half of water in there. So is there anything we can do? You know,
To divert that.
to divert it, yeah.
Yeah, we can look into. I don't know what it would take, but
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if they could put. Asphalt curb in there in the meantime.
That's what I was wondering, yeah, something on that order, otherwise the water's just gonna keep going and filling up and eventually. It's gonna have to go someplace back up until it gets high enough to go over the sidewalk and into my yard. You know, but they've got it pretty well hid, this granular material under the black dirt.
So where are they getting that from?
Well, this, I call this street sweepings,
Sure.
you know, cause it's
But is that what
mostly.
they're done? Cause in the middle of the street and that they've got piles of dirt. Is that part of?
I think, well, I can't say that for sure, but it sure looks like the same thing. It's in the center of the street and what's. They're trying to cover with black dirt, this sample. Yeah,
Brian, that's something you can investigate.
Yeah, we can look into it. Is the top, you know, you mentioned the skiff, is that about 4 inches of?
Oh, they-
the topsoil or?
You know, all I did, I knew they covered it up, so all I did was take my hands and do this and reach down and got this bag full of stuff. I mean, it's.
Okay.
You know, it's domed up and then they put a dome on top. Well, what happens when you go to level it off between the curb? You got black dirt here and you got this stuff in the center,
Sure.
you know. I just don't wanna have to have, you know, I don't wanna have to dig this stuff back out. And put in black, you know, black dirt and put my sod back, cause that's what I'm gonna do, and the sprinkler system. But this, and I would never do this. This
Me
is,
from here, that looks like sand.
it is, it's sand and rock and, yeah. Nothing that's medium to grow, grass. So, I think that's all. Let me look at this. Good, that's pretty much. But thanks for listening to me.
Well, thank you both for bringing it to our
Mike,
attention.
bring up that sidewalk you,
I-
they replaced.
Oh, yeah, they,
Dan told me they were all done.
no, I got a couple sections of sidewalk they haven't replaced.
Yeah, I think a couple of those sections were taken out by Northwestern Energy when they did their work. However, we're looking to do that plus more.
Okay.
You know, you mentioned those panels that had cracked and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I need to get with you on, I think we'll need an easement to go, you know, grade back on your property to make that work and then realign that sidewalk. So I'll chat with you tomorrow.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, and I know things happen, I'm in this business too, but, you know, we've got dirt in the decorative rock, I mean, you know, it's a mess. You know, so, anyway, well, on a high note, your water department, you gotta pat them on the back, you know, out at my farmhouse, east of town off of Southeast Fourth. Whoever put the city water line into that house did not put a shut off in there. And it's not the city's problem, it's the landowner at that time or the plumber that did it. But Jerry Moore was out there with a pick on the road because he thought he heard something, you know, through his locator. And he's picking away and picking away and picking away. And, you know, he's to be commended. And there was a couple other guys there, Jan Teeman was there, there's 2 other guys that I don't know. That were there, but,
They found a shut off?
no, we ended up putting it in, but we couldn't put it in without shutting the main off.
Got it.
And, you know, shutting a main off is a big deal, but, you know, and they were there while my guys, installed the shut off and the plumber did his thing on the inside, but, you know, we complain a lot, but we don't ever, you know, tell the good stuff or the highlights, and I want to make sure that your water sewer department knows that, it's appreciated. And I told them that,
Thank you.
but the bosses need to know too, and the supervisors, so. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, we have board opening. We have two positions on the Community Center Advisory Committee. 3-year term starting in January 2024. And our next regular commission meeting will be December 18th at 5:30 p.m. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.